Ukraine waited for Russia's radars to blink, then gutted the mountain stronghold from within in under 9 seconds.
In the gray morning haze, the radar aboard a Russian patrol vessel suddenly caught an impossible signal. A Ukrainian UAV slicing straight into Crimea's restricted zone like a streak of light. Seconds later, 5 57E6 missiles from the Panzer S-1, each worth $140,000, roared off their rails and missed entirely. As the UAV skimmed into Mount Airy, home to some of the most expensive radars on the peninsula, every watch officer understood the truth. This wasn't a warning. It was the opening beat of an attack Russia had never trained to survive. Before we enter the battle, let us know where you're watching from. It shows how strong the global attention truly is. The first signs of trouble came fast and felt wrong. The Panzer S-1, a $20 million flagship of Russia's point defense network, switched to its 30mm cannons, but the Ukrainian UAV simply vanished between radar sweeps, slipping into a perfect Doppler notch as if the system had blinked. Then the real pressure hit. A second group of Ukrainian drones dove in low, forcing a nearby Tor M2 worth $25 million to engage. It fired two 9M331 missiles, each cutting a white arc over the beach, but both were thrown off by sea clutter interference and detonated into empty spray. Russian radio traffic erupted into overlapping shouts, half reports and half disbelief. Operators argued over disappearing targets, phantom echoes, and missing track files until one officer muttered the words no one wanted to hear. "We've got a radar black hole." The investigation phase began with urgency and disbelief. A Su-30SM, a $50 million air superiority fighter, tore through the sky, its Barzar radar sweeping in wide arcs only to lose the Ukrainian UAV every 2 seconds, as the tiny craft jerked unpredictably across the horizon. Then came the second clash. The pilot fired two R-73 missiles, each worth $300,000, into the drifting swarm. Their infrared seekers searched for the familiar blaze of a jet engine, but the drone's electric motors, barely reaching 50 degrees Celsius, were simply too cold to lock onto. Both missiles sped off into empty air. As ground stations pulled the raw sensor feeds, the truth settled over the command net like a weight. The drone's reflections were falling below the radar's noise floor. The system wasn't being jammed. It wasn't malfunctioning. It was losing a physics fight it could never win. Ghost signals rose from the water at first, just a few faint specks, then full radar reflections that made no tactical sense. Russian operators believed they were only sea clutters. But if those reflections weren't sea clutter, then what was trying to crawl out of the water? Until the shapes finally broke the surface. They weren't aircraft. They were Ursula-class USVs, each worth $900,000, carrying launch bays packed with Ukrainian FPV drones. And the entire time, they stayed perfectly hidden inside the blind spot of the $40 million Podlyot K-1 radar, a system that can see cruise missiles at 300 kilometers but cannot observe a few degrees below its own horizon. Then the third clash erupted. A Russian BK-16 landing craft, a $4 million patrol vessel, swung its hull and unleashed a furious stream of 14.5mm fire at the rising swarm. The round stitched bright lines across the sea, but every shot missed. Navigation radar can show dots on a screen, but it cannot calculate lead angle or closing velocity. The gunners were firing blind at targets that moved like sparks in a windstorm. At that moment, the Russian command realized the truth they feared. This wasn't a lone UAV slipping through gaps. It was a coordinated, multi-layered strike from the sea. A full system attacking another system, and theirs was already losing. If you think Ukraine still fights strong, comment 1. If Russia tightens control, comment 2. If peace should lead, comment 3. Ukraine moved to tighten its advantage. Relay boats, each a $500,000 floating node, spread across the water like silent Wi-Fi towers, stitching together a resilient control network that let operators guide drones from far beyond the horizon. In response, Russia scrambled fresh assets. A Su-27 SM-3 roaring in from the north and a Mi-35M attack helicopter, a $36 million gunship sweeping low along the coast. Command also activated the Nebo-M, a $100 million radar famed for tracking stealth aircraft, hoping to patch the widening gaps in their situational awareness. But the fix never came. Every low-altitude radar feed warped under heavy sea clutter, the wave reflection saturating screens with static ghosts. Terrain masking along the coastline carved blind wedges into coverage, hiding entire approach lanes. Even with new aircraft in the air and one of Russia's most expensive radars online, the picture only grew darker. The drones weren't just slipping through gaps anymore. The entire defensive grid was being outmaneuvered at the physics level, and Russia had no clean way to strike back. The climax came like a coordinated heartbeat. Ukraine's second swarm rose out of the haze, each drone carrying an $800-shaped charge designed for one purpose: slip beneath the massive radar domes and strike the maintenance access panels that no engineer ever expected to face a direct hit. One by one, the drones dove, igniting focused copper jets that sliced through reinforced steel as if it were aluminum foil. The first dome to fall was the Nebo. The moment its array collapsed, the entire S-400 battery, a $300 million flagship of Russian air defense, went blind beyond a few dozen miles. Seconds later, flames erupted from the Podlyat K-1. With that $40 million radar gone, Russia lost all vision below 100 meters, leaving low-altitude approaches wide open. Then the final blow landed. A drone struck the armored entrance of the Atri command post, punching through with surgical precision. Inside, servers, power conduits, and routing nodes failed in a chain reaction. In under 4 minutes, a network built over decades, the backbone of Crimea's air defense grid, collapsed into radio silence. The Russians weren't just outgunned, they were outmaneuvered at every layer of their own system. When the dust settled, the scale of the collapse became impossible to ignore. An air defense network worth billions of dollars had gone dark almost instantly, its backbone severed in every direction. The S-400, Tor M2, Panzer S-1, even the Nebo-M systems Russia had spent decades perfecting now stood like silent museum pieces, stripped of the unified data they needed to fight. Meanwhile, Ukraine's cost was almost laughable in comparison. Drones worth only a few $1,000s each had dismantled an entire radar architecture built to stop stealth jets and cruise missiles. The imbalance wasn't just tactical, it was historic. Smoke from the burning radar domes drifted down into the coastal villages, turning daylight into a gray haze. Russian firefighters guided a Ukrainian technician out of a collapsing relay station, the man dizzy from heat shock, and in that moment, no one cared which side he belonged to. A Russian family opened their shelter to a group of Ukrainian workers fleeing the spreading fumes, while across the border, Ukrainian loudspeakers warned civilians to stay clear of falling debris. And when the sky finally settled, a different question rose from the silence. In a war defined by cheap drones and billion-dollar defenses, how long can ordinary people carry the weight of decisions made far above them?